Right. So my name's Barry Turner, and I'm the presenter this morning. We're going to be looking at ways of making working remotely work for you. This is a brief look at the content. So we're going to look at some objectives, different technology choices, some security concerns, personal behaviour and dress, and then managing meetings, the environment and expectations, and a couple of other ideas. In terms of objectives, my objective this morning is to provide you with a set of tips and actions to enable effective remote working within your organisation. Secondly, to enable you to write down your own remote working action plan for your organisation. Why me? So I'm like yourselves, I'm a self-employed consultant. Living here in South Wales. In my company, there is just myself. My wife does a bit of the admin and the banking. So I do understand the working environment that you're all working in. I've been working with remote technology since the early 2000s, including leading teams, delivering consultancy, running webinars, running internal conferences, and one-to-one meetings. So I've been immersed in using this type of technology now for 15 years. And over the past couple of years, I've conducted over 100 remote consulting and auditing sessions using a wide variety of collaboration tools. So we're going to look at three broad areas: technology and information. And I'll talk you through a bunch of different tools that you can use to help people work remotely. We'll look at some of the security concerns, because the security vulnerabilities change when you start yourself and your people start working remotely. And then we'll look at some areas covering the people and the processes. So what you're seeing here is a table of the different technology choices you have available. I won't go through all of them because we've got a relatively limited time to cover the content this morning. So in the left-hand column, titled Technology, there's a group. I've grouped the technologies together into, in total, there's about six different groups. There's some on the following slide as well. So I'll just touch on each of those, and my intention here is just to help broaden your understanding of the choices that you have and some of the cost implications. So the easiest one, and by far the most mature technology, is conference call. This is where we just dial into a number and enables any number of us to have a conversation. Probably less popular now, but it's still very relevant. It's quick, it's easy. The vendor I've put up there, Powwow Now, I personally haven't used, but they appear to be quite cost effective. The good thing with conference calls is you just pay for it as you use it, and it's simple and quick to set up. And in many instances, voice is all we need. Video is nice to be able to look you in the eye and down the camera and share content, and in many cases that's critical, but there's lots of meetings where voice is fine. Then we've got web and video conferencing, and there's a bunch of different choices in there. We're using Zoom today, and I've focused on the ones that provide quality and also have some flexible cost structures. So Microsoft Teams is a product if yourself and your team are using Office 365. I get my Office 365 subscription from GoDaddy, and it comes with Microsoft Teams. Microsoft are also advertising Teams as a free application now. It works really well. So if you can use that, and it means you don't have to pay for anything, that's a good way forward. Google Hangouts, that is Google's version of Microsoft Teams. If you're using Google for your business applications rather than Microsoft, Hangouts is included within your monthly fee. I've used this a couple of times over the last few weeks, and it works really well. Zoom, we'll we're all familiar with. There is a free version available. It does have some limitations. So meetings one-to-one can go on as long as you want. Meetings of 3 or more have a time limit of 40 minutes on. And there are some well-known publicised security concerns around Zoom at the moment. So that's another option. Then the final one is WebEx. So, and this is my particular favourite, simply because I worked for the company that owns WebEx for a long time, and I'm probably most familiar with WebEx and how to use it. It is consistently rated as the best on the market. There are a number of free and low-cost options available with WebEx at the moment, and it does probably give you a wider array of tools than the others. The next bucket to look at is webinar conferencing. So, and I've split this out separately. I know we're on a webinar today, but we're not trying to reach vast numbers. So if your company is involved in the delivery of high volume webinar where you're expecting 500 people or more, then you do need a specialist tool. And one of the few on the market is WebEx. And I suggest if you're looking for that type of tool, you go and have a look at the website. Then we've got the mobile phone and tablet solutions, and FaceTime is free for all Apple users. WhatsApp runs on just about any platform, and then Skype. All you need is a Microsoft account. And many of these work really well one-to-one. They tend, because they're aimed at the consumer market, they tend not to have the security that features that you need in a business environment. And some of the, I mean, WhatsApp I use constantly. My family, it communicates almost most exclusively at times over WhatsApp. But and I do use it for business, but only on a one-to-one basis. So it doesn't really scale particularly well when you want to have more people in the meeting. For those of you with phone systems, so many of the phone systems will have web and collaboration applications either already built in or available for you to add on to the phone system. So there's I've listed a couple of vendors there: Mitel, 8x8, Cisco, and Avaya. All have fully featured collaboration systems that can be easily added into the phone. If that's something you want to do, I suggest that you check with your provider and talk that through with them. And then the next area, I've included some team collaboration applications. Working remotely. I mean, I work remotely extensively, but I'm just me and the company. I tend to be working with clients, and sometimes it's one-to-many. Typically, it's just one-to-one. So the team collaboration tool I use the most is Microsoft Teams, because one of my clients uses that. But there are a number of other tools available, because when you're remote working, it isn't just about being able to do the video and the web sharing as we're doing now. It's also about being able to share documents securely and safely, review documents other people have worked on, and store them in a central place, so that you know it's secure, and B, people can access it and work on it. So in here I've got Slack is a collaboration tool with a list of features that is as long as my arm. It's probably the Rolls-Royce product on the market. It's not the cheapest one. It's £10 per month per user. It is used extensively within the software development industry because of its broad set of features. Trello is a particular favourite of mine. It's more of a project management type of tool. It enables you to track tasks, keep tasks on a visible on the board, and also communicate with your fellow people, your team members who are also working on that same task. Microsoft Teams we've covered, as well as the audio and the visual. You can store files in there, you can create teams, you can access your SharePoint. So it's if you have a Microsoft account, it's a well-rounded tool. And to go along with that Microsoft SharePoint, if you have an Office 365 subscription, again, you will have access to Microsoft SharePoint. Please use it. It gives you a lot of, it enables secure file sharing, and is relatively straightforward to set up. And finally, the Google version, Google Drive. Again, it's included in Google Apps. It enables secure file sharing. So there are, as well as the video and audio, you need to think about these other applications. Split security into two areas. There's the security for the remote meeting, so like we're doing now, and then there's the broader security concerns for the company, which I'll cover in the next couple of slides. So when you're having remote meetings, please consider the audience and content confidentiality requirements. So if you are having a board meeting and you want to make sure that content is completely confidential, you need a tool that enables you to do that. And also you need to be in an environment that enables you to do that. Recording requires permission, so you either need to let people know that you're recording and give them the option of not joining the meeting, or ask them for their permission to record. Enabling your teams to use any, so if many of you on this webinar will be, well, you're all small companies. You may well be informal in nature. Enabling your teams to use any application can result in content being public. So my suggestion here is you pick a tool and then ensure that everybody works that tool. It makes the security aspects much easier to manage. Be aware of screenshots of confidential material. If you're using a webinar with a potential client or any other external company, and you're sharing material with them, it's very easy for people to take screenshots. So do be sensitive to that risk. If there is material that you don't want to share publicly, make sure that you have an NDA in place to protect against that. Be aware of uninvited guests. So a little bit different today because this is going out publicly on Zoom and on Facebook. But if you're running a closed meeting and there's someone on the call who you won't identify themselves and you don't know who it is, I suggest you close the call down, set a new one up, and all rejoin. Only takes 2 minutes, and it gets rid of the risk of someone listening who shouldn't be there. Conversely, some tools will allow you to eject unwanted participants. So if someone won't identify themselves, eject them from the meeting. Again, it's about reduction of risk of someone hearing something you don't want them to. Enable the host to control who shares the content. So when we set the call up at about 10 to 10 this morning, I had to ask Dewi to allow me to share content. Again, that gives you control over the meeting and helps you make it proceed in an acceptable manner and quality. Please avoid public meetings and public areas. So we go in Costa. I know many of the cafes are shut at the moment, but you could well be travelling along, travelling on the motorway and calling the services. If you join a meeting from somewhere like that, then people can see your content and read it over your shoulder. It might not concern you personally, I find that not acceptable. So if I'm going to do meetings when I'm traveling, I tend to pull up, get parked up, buy a drink, and then do the meeting from the car. And then last point here is ensure meetings, choose a tool that can have passwords and a meeting number to access. So that again helps you control who's on the meeting and make sure that any material remains confidential. So this is quite a big area. So the security vulnerabilities for your company change when you start working remotely, and you do need to be aware of them. And regardless of whether, like myself, you're a one-person company or whether you've got 5 or 6 people, the vulnerabilities are there and the vulnerabilities change. So first of all, research your platform options before deciding which one to use, and make sure the security options that you want are in place. The provider's serviceability needs to be up to the task, probably less critical at the moment for the smaller companies like myself on the call. But if you're looking for something that covers big numbers, you do need to choose a system that will scale. Decide if you want to allow personal use of the system. So many of the business quality systems provide a better service and quality than the consumer ones. If you've got employees or co-workers who want to use that whilst they're at home for family reasons, that's a choice you need to make. If they're using a company laptop at home, it does open up a set of additional vulnerabilities that you need to be aware of, and by that I mean you don't want their family members using a company laptop. They may well download stuff that you don't want downloaded with viruses and things on board, and suddenly they're rife throughout your organization. So please be aware of that risk. Look at how the system is encrypted. So with Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft Teams, from my desktop here to the Zoom or facilities is encrypted. And for this type of call, that's brilliant. That's fine. If you are handling really confidential material, perhaps you work in the health market, or you work, one of your customers works in the security market, then you may want to look at end-to-end encryption. Tends to come with an additional price, but a small number of the vendors do that. Also check if there are any GDPR and security compliance issues for you to manage. So if you're like Doe is collecting email addresses and from attendees, you need to make sure that that data is handled in a way that's compliant with GDPR. And if you have any security certifications such as Cyber Essentials Plus, or even the more extensive ISO 27001, if those apply to your fixed location, they may not apply when you're all working remotely. So that's something you need to think about and review to maintain those security credentials. Be aware of any data residency issues. So if you're working with certain areas of the UK government, they prefer data residency to be in the UK. If you're recording calls and you're using a system such as Zoom, as we are today, it's unlikely, I'm not sure with Zoom, I'm guessing at this, it's unlikely that the data is of the recording is residing in the UK. It's probably outside. Not an issue for today, but if you're working with some elements of the UK government, that certainly will be an issue. So Generally, the business grade systems provide much stronger security features than consumer products. So Microsoft Teams has much more security features built in than the consumer Skype. And that's, you know, that because they're targeting different markets. You need to think, if you've got people working from home rather than the office and they're accessing applications and systems running on the server, you need to think about a secure way of making that happen. Almost certainly a VPN is needed, and you need to, I would advise you there to talk to your IT provider and or connectivity provider and just look at what you need to do. You really don't want people trying to log on from home to systems running on the server in an insecure way. And the reason I've put so much content on security in this is we view the current circumstances as being a business challenge. And we're all working hard to make sure that our businesses survive and then go on to thrive over the next period, however long that may be. The cyber criminals see this as a huge opportunity. So, you know, having everyone working from home opens up oodles of opportunity for them to hack into systems, gain entry, and play havoc. So, whilst I it may appear I'm overemphasizing this, I am really conscious of the fact that the cyber criminal community see this as probably the biggest opportunity they've had for a long time. You need to manage device security if your employees are using personal devices. So if you've got all your co-workers, employees have got their own laptops, you need to make sure that they're clean and they've got all the relevant security you want on there to prevent them picking up viruses and Trojans and infecting your network. Please remember, right, remote work still needs backing up. If you've got people who normally work in an office and the backup is automated when they're in the office, that need doesn't go away just because they're working from home. Backup is easy to arrange. I back up automatically to 3 different locations continually through the day. So and that costs me very little to do. And it's one of those things it's easy to overlook. And then finally, please do enforce password management. The biggest thing you can do to keep cyber criminals out of your company is enforce disciplined password management. I know that can get hard to do, but there are tools out there that are relatively cheap that help you do that. I use LastPass, and I can't tell you how pleased I am with it. It's really good, and it helps you manage the passwords. So personal behavior and dress. When you're using video, right, please dress appropriately. I've been slopping around in shorts and a t-shirt for much of the last 4 weeks. So this morning I put the shirt on. Avoid strong colours and patterns. So that I chose a shirt that's fairly neutral colour and is light blue because I know that works well with video. If you put bright colours on, a bright red shirt or strongly patterned tops, they can be hard on the eye. They don't work particularly well over video. Personal habits are accentuated. So I did a couple of years ago, I was doing some consultancy that was all done remotely. And I had one particular hour-long interview with an individual who had spent most of that hour playing, and his personal habit involved his nose and a finger. I'll leave the rest to your imagination. I was really uncomfortable watching that. He was obviously really unaware that I was watching him. But habits are accentuated over video. Eye contact. So hopefully I've been looking at the camera most of the time. And when you're using video, the way you make contact is to look directly at the camera. And that simulates eye contact. If we look around, the people and move our gaze or look down here at our notes, the people who are listening to us probably think that we're not paying attention. So please look at the camera. It gets people's attention. Pay attention, right? You and make sure other people on the call are paying attention. If you hear tapping in the background, it's probably someone doing email. So pull them up over it. Right? If they're not paying attention, then they're not attending the meeting, really. Sit or stand. I personally work standing up, and I have been doing for the last 6 months. I think that's great. The other people prefer a chair. Make sure that you're comfortable is the key piece. So and that's down to personal choice. I've left the video on this morning because I had a little technical hitch with Zoom and I tried to turn it off yesterday. But typically turn off the video after introductions, particularly in larger meetings. If we're all using video, it takes up lots of bandwidth and can cause quality issues in the course of the broadcast. And if you're using apps such as Zoom that allow you to put different backgrounds on, then those backgrounds again take up bandwidth. So if there's lots of you in the meeting, you probably as well just cutting the backgrounds out. In terms of managing meetings, here's some tips for the person leading the meeting. 1, be early on the session. So Debbie and myself were on the meeting at 10 to 10. We had a tiny little technical issue that we were resolved by 5 to 10, so there was no panic. Allow plenty of time for the agenda. So working remotely typically takes more time to get stuff done than having everyone in a room. And if you're organising the meeting, you need to be aware of that. And A, allow for that when you set the agenda, and B, manage the time really tightly. Check understanding regularly. So it's quite easy to have 5 people in a web conference or video meeting, and the conversation is mainly between 3 people and the other 2 are just in the background. Right? Check that they're understanding the conversation, bring them in, ask them a question, because otherwise they'd almost certainly go on mute and start doing email in the background. When possible, ensure all attendees can contribute. If someone hasn't spoken for a few minutes, ask them a question, invite them to contribute. Do keep notes of any actions agreed, and do share documents. I'm sharing PowerPoint with you this morning. If you're looking at a spreadsheet, share the spreadsheet. If you're looking at a Word document, share the Word document. It just makes the whole meeting a lot more productive. So the photo here is my 2-year-old lab, and as you can see from the ripped up toilet roll, he's quite mischievous. So when I'm doing a video call, I keep the door closed so that Finley, my dog, doesn't come in and start distracting me. And I've got no end of stories where either Finley or our previous lab came in and did just that. So a dedicated work area is optimal. Now in today's, I'm fortunate, I have this is my office, and it's purpose-built office in the house, utilising a spare bedroom. So, but I'm lucky in that. In today's circumstances, where suddenly lots of you have gone from office to home working, there will be many people out there that aren't fortunate enough to have a dedicated work area. encourage those people to find somewhere in their home, whether it's a house or a flat, that they can turn into a mini work area. Minimise distractions and external noise, close the door, as I said earlier, and lighting conditions can be disruptive to video. So I've got a, excuse me, I've got a, and that's a dry throat rather than a dry cough. I've got a window next to my desk here. I closed the blind this morning because when the light comes in the morning, it tends to disrupt the camera. Make other people in the building aware you are in a meeting. So I've got a sign on my door over there on the outside to say I'm on a video webinar. Yesterday I didn't put that up, and about 2 minutes after saying this, my wife opened the door and came in looking for something. So that was a good example of what not to do. A monitor and keyboard are required at a minimum. So if you've got people working from home and they've got a laptop, ideally you really need them to have a monitor and a separate keyboard. Working at a laptop for long periods is really bad work posture. And you know, we all do it and we get away with it for short periods. This is not going to be a short period. This is going to be an extensive time. It's really poor for our bodies to be sat hunched over a laptop. So monitor and keyboard. If you've got people doing data intensive jobs, they may well want 2 or 3 monitors. If that's what they've got in the office, then that they need, ideally they need that at home as well. So sat at a laptop, we've just covered that. And the other thing to look at is the bandwidth at home sufficient? And is a backup required? So I get my broadband from BT, and in case I have broadband issue, and I pay for business broadband, which costs me more money per month, but it does come with additional features, and one of those is a mobile dongle. So if the broadband to the village cuts out, then it just connects over the mobile network. So consider the bandwidth, and the other aspect of bandwidth to think about is you connect. If you've got people connecting to your office to use the servers, have you got enough connectivity for everyone to work at home? Managing expectations. So introducing working remotely is a big cultural shift, and leaders and employees need to adapt. So I was talking to my next door neighbour yesterday. He works for one of the big high street banks, and he's got a team of people who work on commercial loans. And he said to me, with the bank he works for, have in the space of 5 weeks moved everyone from office to home working, and they've moved their digital and remote working strategy forward more in 5 weeks than they had in the previous 5 years, because suddenly everyone's had to focus and do it. That's a really big change for them, and even though you're all small, much smaller companies, if you're not used to working at home, it is still a big change. So you need to create a foundation of trust and safety so people can feel open and can talk about any issues they have. Remember, it starts with you, right? It starts at the top. You need to set the agenda, be open, be positive about it. Prioritize meaningful work. So you want people working on the bits that add value, because it will. Most of you will be working. Not all of you, but most of you will be focused on how do you keep your business surviving. Establish regular rituals, and by that I mean have a morning call. Right, doesn't need to be long, 15 minutes, all dial into a Zoom call or a WebEx meeting, have a chat, talk about what you're doing that day, and then let people get on with it. It just keeps everyone communicating. Or if it's not every day, twice a week, have a team meeting with everyone. Ensure that people have access to the technology. You can't send people home to work and just assume that either A, they've got the technical skills to be able to make that happen, or B, they've got access to the technology anyway. So, they might not have broadband. One of my daughters, she lives in Manchester. Up to a couple of years ago, she was living in a flat, and actually their broadband provision in the flat was really poor. So they were dependent on a mobile connectivity in the flat. So you can't assume that everyone has got a nice big fat broadband connection coming into to where they're working. And collect regular feedback from the team. Easy to do. There's no end of surveys available with people like SurveyMonkey, but get that feedback. Doesn't need to be formal with the survey, but it can also be informal on one of the meetings, because it keeps people engaged. Leading teams. You're using technology to replace face-to-face, and this changes the leadership dynamics, right? Some employees will love remote working, and others find it difficult. I worked for a long time for a US technology company based near Heathrow, and I rather than driving from Chepstow to Heathrow every day, I work from home most of the time. I had a couple of colleagues who probably had an hour's commute, and they found working at home didn't work for them. They had difficulty concentrating, and they just were more productive driving into the office, setting up and working. There's no right and wrong with this. At the moment, we're all forced to work from home, but be aware that some of your team members may find that a difficult challenge. So regular one-to-one sessions are critical. Doesn't need to be video. Give them a ring. When I say talk with them, listen to them, let them talk to you, understand what they're finding easy and where the challenges are. So suddenly moving people to working from home does give you a number of new risks to think about, some of which we touched on, some of which we haven't. The first one is isolation. So if someone is used to working in an office and thrives on the fact that they get a buzz from being with the colleagues and like that chat, then there is a real risk they're going to get isolated and can get down because they're just sat on their own working all the time. That's why on the previous slide I was suggesting you need to be in contact with people all the time and let them know that you're there for them. I've been working at home 20 years. I'm very used to it. I find long periods without that face-to-face contact actually quite difficult. So I'm normally out meeting with clients at least 3 days a week. And when as for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've just been sat at home doing this. I personally, I miss that face-to-face contact. So and I'm used to it. So people who aren't used to it, the isolation threat is really key. Cybersecurity we've touched on, but please, remote working brings new vulnerabilities. Be aware of them. Set your customer expectations. So if your customers are used to be able to ring into an office and get you 9 till 5 or whenever and get the response, let them know that they will be aware of the changing circumstances, but please let them know, right? Send them an email, ring them up. That's going to depend on how many customers you have, but set them expectations. Talk to them about the changes you're implementing, why you're doing it, and how they can get hold of you. Next risk is employees lacking effective working environments at home. We've touched on that on a couple of points, but if you've got someone who, some of the younger members of our community have probably gone back to living with mum and dad. Others may be sat in a bedsit somewhere and locked in a tiny little room with 10 other people sharing the building. It's not ideal for them, so be aware of that. Connectivity, we've touched on. Keeping focused and motivated for everyone is always a risk, and your role as a leader is if you do nothing else over the next 3 months, is keeping people focused and motivated. And then finally, employee burnout. It's very easy to overwork when you're remote working. Right? You need to be disciplined to say, right, I've done 7 hours today. I'm going to shut the laptop, turn it off, and take the dog for a walk. You need that discipline. It's all too easy to suddenly still be working at 9 o'clock. And we all do that occasionally. But if you're doing it day after day after day, you will get a negative effect with your team members. This is a new slide. I presented the material yesterday with a different group, and they asked about the business case. So I've inserted this slide. Working from home comes with some costs, but it also comes with some significant returns on investment. So I'm aware that we're a wee bit short of time, so I'll focus on the positive aspects. So a reduction in office space is often possible. There is a lot of documentation to show that people get increased productivity by working from home and working remotely. It enables you to access new talent from areas remote from the office. So if your company come out of the next 3 months with a robust remote working philosophy and approach, and you're looking for new people but can't find them locally, if the work can be done remotely, you can recruit from anywhere. Talent engagement and retention increases. Lots of people see remote working now as a necessity, right? Particularly those with young families. I mean, I'm fortunate my 2 girls are both flown the nest and are living away from home. So I don't have that challenge, but lots of people in the workplace do. And having that flexibility to work remotely can be a big attraction for talent, and also helps you retain people. And then obviously there's a reduction in travel costs. So also in the slides, there's a set of references and tools. I won't go through these, but these are places I visited on the web to put the material together. And then finally, there's a remote working action plan that you please feel free to take and use. So thank you for listening. That's my content finished, Dewi.